Hello and good afternoon from Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. My name is Moshe and I'm a member of the TABC class of 2005. And it's my privilege today to be able to spend a few minutes with you sharing some Divrei Torah about Hanukkah. There's something unique about the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros Hanukkah. And what's unique about the mitzvah is that there are three levels in which a person can be mekayim this mitzvah. There's the basic Ner Yishu Beso, there's the Mahadrin, and then there's Mahadrin Min HaMahadrin. And what's unique about this is that we don't find by any other mitzvahs that they have levels of fulfillment. So we don't find, for example, that there is a mitzvah of sukkah, and then a more mahudar mitzvah of sukkah, and then a mahadrin min mahadrin level of sukkah. So what's unique about the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros Hanukkah that it has this quality? And to make the question even stronger, if you look around the world, everyone does the mahadrin min mahadrin level. No one does Ner Yishu Beso. No one does even the Mahadrin level. So what is it about Neiros Hanukkah that all of Am Yisrael does the Mahadrin Min Mahadrin version of this mitzvah? The Beis Halevi gives an answer, and he says that the entire nes of the Pach Shemen was done in a Mahadrin Min Mahadrin way. What does he mean? He says that when the Hashmonaim came to the Beis Hamikdash and only found enough oil to last for one day, what they could have done, since they needed it to last for 8 days, they could have taken the wicks that they had to light the candles and thinned them out into eighths. And then each thinner wick would have only drawn a smaller portion of the oil. It would have lasted for 8 days. It's true that it wouldn't have burned as brightly or as beautifully, but at least it would have lasted. They would have been able to get by. But the Chashmonaim said, no, we don't want to just get by. We want to light the menorah in the most mehudar way possible. We want these lights to be able to shine brightly and beautifully. And because they took that step of lighting the candles of the menorah in this Mahadrin Min Mahadrin way, so too, built into the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros Hanukkah is this concept of Mahadrin and Mahadrin Min Mahadrin. And that's why we practice this mitzvah on such a Mahadrin level. And I think using this Yesod of the Beis Halevi, we can understand a somewhat puzzling machlokes in the Gemara on Shabbos, a famous machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai famously says that on the first night of Hanukkah you start with 8 candles and you go down all the way to 1. Whereas Beis Hillel says, no, you start with 1 and you go up to 8. And the Gemara presents 2 explanations for what they're arguing about. Rabbi Yossi bar Avin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. The first explanation is simply, how do you count the days? Are you going to light the candles based on the days that have already passed, or are you going to light the candles based on the days that are yet to come? But the second understanding is much more puzzling. The explanation according to Beis Shammai, the reason that we start with a full Chanukiah and we go down to an emptier one, is to parallel the Parei HaChag. On Sukkot, there were several korbanos that were brought, several types of animals, and one type of animal was parim, was bulls. And those parim were brought in a diminishing fashion. The first day of Sukkot, there were 13 parim, the second day 12, the third day 11, and so on and so forth, down until the end of the Yom Tov. So just like the parim on Sukkot were brought in diminishing fashion, so too we light Neiros Hanukkah in diminishing fashion. And Beis Hillel says, no, Ma'alim b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. When it comes to Kedusha, we go up and we don't go down. Now the question is, according to Beis Shammai, what does the Parei HaChag have to do with Hadlakas Neiros Hanukkah? And what does Beis Hillel's response to Beis Shammai have to do with anything? Are they arguing about 2 totally separate things? Parei HaChag, a concept of Ma'alim b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. What's going on with this machlokes? Are they even talking about the same thing? So I think that they are talking about the same thing. I think they're actually arguing about something that's very fundamental. And that is, what does it mean to stand out as a Jew in the world? Now, according to Beis Shammai, what it means to stand out is the model of Parei HaChag. As we know, there were 70 total parim that were brought over Sukkot. And that represents the 70 nations of the world. And the reason that they were brought in a diminishing fashion was because just as the parim are diminishing, so too the nations of the world will ultimately diminish. But another part of the korbanos at Sukkot was the kvasim, the lambs. The kvasim, there were 14 kvasim brought every single day, a constant number. And the kvasim represent Am Yisrael. And the reason that they're constant is because Am Yisrael remains constant throughout. So the imagery that Beis Shammai is painting for us is of a constant, of a Jew who doesn't move, who doesn't diminish, who's just there, who's always there like a rock. Whereas the 70 nations are constantly diminishing. And what Beis Shammai is saying is that to be a Jew, to stand out as a Jew, means to take that relationship that you have with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what you know is truth. The other nations of the world may think you're crazy, they may argue with you, but you know as a Jew that what you have, that relationship is true. And you hold on to that for dear life and you don't let go. And one by one, the nations of the world, the people of the world, they'll come to realize it. They'll fall away by the wayside. They'll come to understand the truth. The Navi Zechariah tells us that eventually the nations of the world will all come to celebrate Chag HaSukkos. They'll all understand and realize and internalize this concept of a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they'll understand that the Jews were right all along. And that's what Beis Shammai says, to be a Jew is everything else is diminishing around you, you hold on. Beis Hillel says no. That may be true when we had a Beis HaMikdash. That may be true when the Shekhinah, when the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was felt in the world. So a Jew didn't have to do that much. All you had to do was hold on to that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the power, the presence of Hashem was so evident that eventually everyone else would figure it out. But that's not true when we're in Galus. When the nights are dark and cold and there's not that much to hold on to, you can't just be there anymore. You have to grow. You have to add. You have to be Mosif Kedusha. And that's what Beis Hillel is saying. The Parei HaChag are not a good model for Neros Chanukah. The Parei HaChag, that was a time in history where there was Gilu Shechina in the world. Everything was clear. But Chanukah is about a Jew in Galus, a representative of a Jew in Galus. A Jew in Galus, things are dark, things are unclear. And it's our responsibility to make ourselves stand out in this type of environment. And how do we do that? By adding Kedusha, by constantly making ourselves higher and higher. And that's what Beis Hillel means when he says, Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. I think we can add a new understanding to this line in this specific context. Beis Hillel says, if you want to understand what's Kedusha, in Kodesh, Malin. You have to go up. V'lo moridin. You don't put down others. Because again, there's two ways that a person could raise himself up. He can either work on himself and build himself up, or he can diminish those around him. And Beis Hillel says, when it comes to Kedusha b'Kodesh, Malin, we have to go up, v'lo moridin. We don't put others down. And so it's our responsibility to build up ourselves, to add more and more Kedusha, to add more and more holiness, to add more and more light to the world, and in that way, we'll be able to make ourselves stand out in this world. And so, we daven one day, that the nations of the world will come to Yerushalayim. They'll join us to celebrate Chag HaSukkos. They'll understand. They'll understand that. And maybe then we'll paskin like Beis Shammai. Because then there won't be anything for us to do other than just hold on to that relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And everyone else will realize the truth and the power of what we have. But until that point we're still in Galus, we're still in the world of Chanukah, we must raise ourselves up. We must be Mosif Kedusha on ourselves. And that's why I think also one of the Roshei Tevos for Chanukah, the reasons that the Yontif is called Chanukah, the Roshei Tevos are given Ches Neros v'Halacha Kebeis Hillel. The inherent to the mitzvah of Chanukah is this idea of being Mosif Kedusha, of adding more and more light on top of what we already have. And so Chanukah teaches us that in difficult times, when things are dark, when things are unclear, the secret is to follow Beis Hillel. The secret is to add, make ourselves stand out, not to diminish others around us or wait for others to go, fall by the wayside. We can't wait for that. We have to be Mosif Or. And by doing that, we'll be Zoche to live lives full of light and illuminate the darkness that's all around us. I'm wishing everyone a wonderful Chanukah, and may we all be Zoche to have a happy, healthy year in the upcoming year, a year full of light, a year full of spirituality, full of growth, full of health and happiness. Thank you.